Brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Frennis. This edition highlights key LinkedIn posts on future mobility and market evolution in weeks 5 and 6. Frennis supports enterprises with market and competitive intelligence decoding disruptive technologies, customer needs, regulatory change, and competitive moves, so product teams and strategy leaders don't just react, but shape the future of mobility. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are looking at the start of February 2026, specifically weeks 5 and 6.
Yep.
And looking at the stack of research you've brought, it feels like the theme isn't just new tech anymore. It feels like we're dealing with the messy reality of actually trying to use this stuff.
That is a perfect way to frame it. I mean, if the last few years were all about the wow factor of prototypes, these 2 weeks have been about the how factor.
A how factor.
Yeah, how do you fit a robotaxi into a narrow London street? How do you make the math work for a rural bus that, almost nobody rides? We are moving from invention to integration.
Integration sounds a lot less sexy than invention.
Maybe. But I guess that's where the survival is. We're seeing a clear shift from isolated pilots trying to scale up. Micromobility is really growing up, and city infrastructure is just trying to catch up.
Okay, so let's start with the big headline grabber. Autonomous mobility, AI. The robotaxi.
Of course.
It feels like every time I open my feed, there's another city being promised a driverless future.
It's accelerating, no doubt. The activity has just exploded in the last fortnight, and we have to start with, the elephant in the room.
Tesla, right. They officially launched the driverless robotaxi service in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I saw, the markets went absolutely berserk.
Oh, completely.
People were throwing around these valuation numbers that just didn't seem real. Was it something like $9 trillion?
Market reaction was, let's just say, enthusiastic. But we need to look past the stock ticker. Dr. Gabriel Seiberth posted a really necessary reality check on this.
Okay.
He's calling for what he terms bear case math.
Bear case math. I like that. So basically stripping away all the hype.
Exactly. He's arguing that we need to look at the unit economics of a single ride. If you strip away the whole tech company multiple, does a robotaxi fleet actually generate more profit per mile than a standard Uber? Mm-hmm. You've got the cost of the sensors, the massive computing power, remote operations centers, liability insurance. Seiberth suggests that if you do the math, this might not look like a high-margin software business.
It might look more like a heavy asset logistics business.
Precisely. Which, usually trades at a much, much lower valuation.
But to be fair to the bulls.
Well, yeah, there was a major operational milestone. Barak Sauce confirmed it.
What was that?
Tesla is running that Austin service without safety drive.
Okay, that is a big deal. Usually when we hear driverless, there's secretly a guy in the front seat just hovering his hands over the wheel.
Not here. The seat is empty. And that psychological shift for the passenger and for the other drivers on the road, that's significant.
Sure.
But Austin is one thing. It's wide. It's a grid. The weather is generally predictable. The real test is coming to Europe.
I saw that. Andreas Kubli highlighted a report that Uber is planning to launch in Zurich.
By the end of this year.
And Zurich is not Austin. You've got trams, narrow medieval streets, snow.
It's a completely different level of complexity. But if you think Zurich is tough, look at London.
Right. Francisco Geronimo spotted a Waymo there.
A Waymo, physically on the streets of London.
Wait, Waymo is actually testing in London. I thought they were sticking to the sunny American Southwest.
Not anymore. Kachik Katriyan confirmed they are targeting a Q4 2026 launch for services there.
Wow.
And just think about what that means. London is arguably one of the most hostile driving environments on Earth. You have cyclists weaving in and out, double-decker buses, black cabs that just own the road.
Tourists looking the wrong way before they cross the street.
Exactly. If they can make it work in London, they can make it work anywhere. But Katriyan raised a point that I found really interesting. He wasn't just talking about navigation.
What was it?
He was talking about the trolley problem.
Ah, okay. This is where it gets heavy.
It does. I mean, the trolley problem has been a philosophy seminar staple for decades, right? Do you swerve to hit one person to save 5? But Katriyan's point is that for Waymo in London, this isn't philosophy anymore. It's code.
So someone actually has to program the car to decide who gets hit in a worst-case scenario.
In a way, yes. As these fleets scale from a few dozen cars to thousands, statistical probability says accidents will happen. The question is, how does the algorithm prioritize safety?
The passenger. The pedestrian.
The cyclist. And maybe more importantly, how do we as a society hold that code accountable?
That ties right into something Philip Koopman was discussing. He's usually pretty critical of how these companies talk about safety.
He is, and for good reason. He takes issue with the industry's tendency to label a crash unavoidable just because the car couldn't stop in the last half a second. His argument is all about contextual risk.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, think about a human driver. If you see a ball roll into the street, you slow down before you see the child chasing it. You anticipate. Koopman argues that a robotaxi can't just have fast reaction times. It needs that contextual foresight. If a car hits someone and the company says, well, we applied the brakes instantly, Koopman says that's not enough.
A competent human would have already slowed down.
A competent human would have slowed down 10 seconds ago because the context looked dangerous.
That's a really high bar. It's asking the AI to have, what, intuition?
Or at least a very, very deep understanding of human unpredictability. But, while we focus on these robotaxis, there's a less glamorous side of autonomy that might actually pay off sooner. Jan Gramatika is looking at buses.
Buses, like self-driving city buses.
Eventually. But he suggests a depot-first path.
Depot first. So like automating the parking lot.
Exactly. Think about the time and money spent just moving buses around the depot, washing them, parking them, charging them, getting them to the start of the route.
It's a controlled environment.
No kids chasing balls. Gramatika argues you get a much faster return on investment by automating the depot than by trying to replace the driver on a busy route immediately.
That makes total sense. It's the boring autonomy that actually saves money.
Boring but profitable is a recurring theme here. And speaking of efficiency, Keith Richmond shared a conversation with the CEO of Voi, Frederick Helm.
Right, about AI, but not for driving the scooters. This was about their internal operations.
Yes. Helm talked about moving from text to text, like asking ChatGPT to write an email, to text to action.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Text to action means the AI actually executes a workflow. So they've built these custom internal tools where the AI connects to their databases and their systems. Helm claimed they cut half their SaaS software stack.
Half.
Half. Because they just built their own AI tools to handle the work.
That is a massive cost saving.
It is. And it aligns perfectly with what Giuliano Liguori is saying. He argues AI is becoming structural infrastructure. It's shifting from a feature, oh, this car has AI, to the entire ecosystem.
It's the invisible layer.
It's the invisible layer that optimizes the fleet, balances the energy grid, predicts demand. It's not just the robot driver, it's the robot manager.
Which is a perfect segue into our second theme, micromobility. Because if AI is the robot manager, the things being managed are increasingly scooters and e-bikes.
And it feels like this sector is finally maturing. It's consolidating, certainly. It's moving from being seen as toys to being seen as legitimate transport.
But the politics.
The political narrative is, well, it's complicated.
I saw a post from a user on LinkedIn. I think his handle was Chinggis Khan, and he went on a bit of a rant about this.
It was a very validating rant for the industry. He pointed out the cycle. First, officials hated shared e-bikes. Then they realized e-bikes replaced cars, so now they love them.
They're the golden solution now.
Exactly. But now they've just shifted that hostility onto e-steps, scooters.
Even though an e-step takes up less space than a bike.
And is often more energy efficient. It's the new innovation backlash. Governments say they want to reduce car usage, but then they regulate against the very devices people choose to use instead.
To be fair, though, the complaints about scooters usually aren't about the riding. They're about the parking, the clutter.
True. Sidewalks blocked by piles of scooters. But Thomas Burton from Spark Park points out that this is often a technology failure, not just bad behavior. He calls it the tunnel view.
Is that a GPS thing?
It is. In a dense city with skyscrapers, GPS signals bounce off buildings. It's called the urban canyon effect. So you might park your scooter perfectly in the designated zone, but the GPS drift makes the system think you're a block away. So the app says, you can't park here.
And so the user gets frustrated and just leaves it wherever.
Exactly. Broughton argues we can't just blame the operators. We need infrastructure solutions like sensors or beacons that can verify compliant parking without relying on GPS.
Or you can solve it with design. Hannah Dos Santos showed off some corrals in Raleigh that looked really cool.
This is such a smart, low-tech solution. Instead of just painting a box on the asphalt, they commissioned artists to design the parking corrals.
So it turns street clutter into street art.
And it builds community acceptance. If the neighbors think the parking spot looks beautiful, they stop complaining about the scooters. It's a psychological win.
But on the regulatory side, we're still kind of stuck with these arbitrary speed limits, right?
Mostly, yes. But Rodrigo Aturin Zapata made a really sophisticated argument to change that. He thinks we should stop regulating based on speed caps and start regulating based on kinetic energy.
Okay, time for a physics lesson. Why does that matter?
Well, think about it. A heavy cargo e-bike loaded with groceries moving at 20 kilometers per hour, that packs a lot of punch if it hits something. A lightweight scooter moving at the same speed has much less energy.
Right.
If you regulate by kinetic energy, you create a framework that accounts for the weight and the speed. It's a much more nuanced safety policy than just saying everything must go this slow.
It's about the potential for damage, not just the velocity.
Exactly. And while the regulators catch up, the business side is making big moves. Horace Didieu reported a major acquisition.
Who is that?
Decathlon Pulse bought a majority stake in Rebike Mobility.
Decathlon, the huge sports retailer.
The very same. They are moving heavily into the refurbished e-bike market. And this is huge because it signals that the Second Life market is becoming big business.
It lowers the price point for people who can't afford a brand new €3,000 e-bike.
It's democratization through refurbishment.
And that brings us to the final point on this theme. Pinar Pinzudi had a bit of a call to action for all these companies.
She did. She noted that the tourism industry, logistics companies, manufacturers, they all benefit massively from cycling infrastructure.
But they don't pay for it.
They rarely pay for the advocacy to get that infrastructure built. It's the classic free rider problem. She's arguing that marketing budgets need to shift toward advocacy. You can't sell bikes if people are too scared to ride on the street.
You have to build the lane to build the market.
That's it.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked cars, we've talked bikes. Now let's talk about the concrete that holds it all together. Theme 3, urban infrastructure.
And here we have to talk about the first mile math. Lawrence Kwame Carter broke this down, and it is brutal for public transport.
This was the comparison between taking the train and just driving, right?
Yes. So let's say you live in the suburbs. You want to take the train to the city. But parking at the train station costs, say, £15 for the day.
Okay.
Carter points out that before you even buy the train ticket, the railway has already lost.
Because if I have an electric car, charging it at home costs pennies. So the drive is cheaper than just the parking fee at the station.
Exactly. The sunk cost of the car in your driveway, combined with high station parking fees, it just kills the value proposition of the train.
So what's the fix? Free parking?
No, that just encourages more driving. Carter suggests the death of park and ride and the rise of scoot and ride.
So replacing car parking with scooter hubs.
High-density hubs for e-bikes and scooters. You dramatically increase the catchment area of the station. People can scoot 3 or 4 miles to the train without needing acres of concrete for cars.
That sounds great for the city, but what about rural areas? Russell King shared some data on the UK's Rural Mobility Fund that...
Well, that made me wince. It was shocking. So they tested on-demand buses in rural areas. Think Uber for buses. The goal was to increase usage.
And did it work?
It did. Usage went up. But the cost...
Hit me with the numbers.
The average subsidy per journey was 91%. The cost to run the trip was about £24. The revenue from the ticket was about £2.
£24 to move one person a few miles? You could almost just pay for them to take a taxi at that rate.
It raises a massive, uncomfortable question. If we want rural connectivity, we have to accept that it is a social service. Purely, it is not a business.
Not until those robotaxis we talked about earlier can eliminate the driver cost.
Exactly. But right now, the economics of rural transit are just broken.
Meanwhile, in the big cities, they're trying to tax the cars away.
Yeah.
Guillermo Campoamor looked at New York City's congestion pricing 1 year later.
And the results are actually positive. 27 million fewer vehicles. Less pollution. But Campoamor's key insight isn't about the toll itself.
It's that a toll alone isn't enough.
You can't just charge people for driving. You have to give them a valid alternative.
Ryan Mahoney backed that up with a look at Malta, which is now, the most congested country in Europe?
It's a cautionary tale. Malta just keeps building more road capacity, wider roads, more lanes. And what happens?
Reduced demand. More people drive.
Mahoney uses Malta to prove that you cannot build your way out of congestion with asphalt. You need a multimodal strategy, or you just get wider traffic jams.
Speaking of strategies, Aljona Melnik highlighted Toyota's Woven City. This feels like the complete opposite of Malta.
It's the ultimate laboratory. It's at the base of Mount Fuji, a living city where residents co-create their lives with autonomous logistics, hydrogen power, and pedestrian-first streets.
It's where we find out if all these buzzwords can actually function as a cohesive society.
We'll see.
I'd love to visit. But let's bring it back to the daily grind. Theme 4, corporate fleets. Because for a lot of our listeners, their mobility choice is whatever their HR department puts in their contract.
And that contract is changing. Nicholas Verstraete gave a very grounded reality check on mobility budgets.
This is the idea that instead of a company car, you get a bucket of cash to spend on trains and Ubers.
Right. It's very trendy. But Verstraete says, careful, it's not a silver bullet. If you have a sales rep covering a rural territory, remember that 24-pound bus ride?
Yeah.
A mobility budget is going to be a nightmare for them. It could be an HR disaster. He argues that mobility budgets should complement the company car, not necessarily replace it.
George Spig calls this the and approach.
Exactly. It's not car versus train. It's electric car and train. Companies need to electrify their fleets, yes, but they also need to offer flexible alternatives for when the car isn't the best tool.
But cost is still king. Timea Pesti noted that in markets like Hungary, companies are really feeling the squeeze.
Inflation and margin pressure are real. She notes that companies are getting creative with financing, choosing between euros and forints to leverage interest rates. It shows that fleet management is becoming as much about forex trading as it is about cars.
But you can also save money by just getting people to bike. Gerben Edeline at Thales shared a pretty cool story about gamification.
The Trapper system. This is brilliant. Thales basically gamified the commute. If you cycle to work, you earn points. You get perks.
And it worked.
It worked. It proves that people respond to incentives. If you make cycling tangibly rewarding, not just good for the planet, but good for my wallet, employees will shift their behavior.
And finally, for those who do still drive, Diane Kalish from Edenred dropped a stat that sort of ends the whole range anxiety debate.
98%, that's the number. Edenred's charging network now covers 98% of public chargers in Europe.
So if you have their fleet card, you can plug in basically anywhere.
Anywhere. The infrastructure argument is dying. The chargers are there. The payment systems are integrated. At this point, if a fleet isn't electrifying, it's a choice, not a constraint.
So bringing this all together, we've got robotaxis losing their safety drivers in Austin but facing the ethical music in London. We've got scooters fighting for parking space while rural buses fight for any funding at all.
Yeah.
What's the golden thread here?
The thread is that the tech part is, well, it's mostly done. The system part is just beginning. The challenge for 2026 isn't inventing a new sensor. It's integrating that sensor into a messy human city.
It's about making the math work between the train station and the driveway.
It's about the connections, exactly. And I'll leave you with this thought. We talked about the trolley problem as a coding issue, but city planning is just a giant trolley problem. Every time we allocate street space to a parking spot, a bike lane, or a robotaxi drop-off zone, we're deciding who matters. We're deciding who gets to move safely and who has to wait. As these technologies scale, those decisions are getting baked into the concrete. We need to make sure we like the result.
A powerful thought to chew on. If you enjoyed this deep dive, new editions drop every 2 weeks. Also check out our other series on electrification and battery technology, next-gen vehicle intelligence, and commercial fleet insights. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for the next deep dive.